Queens, New York, in the early 2000s was a gritty maze of dusty streets, blaring car horns, and big dreams crammed into tiny apartments. That's where I, Emily Harper, grew up in a shoebox of a house where the smell of donuts from my mom's little shop seeped into every wall. My dad, a plumber with hands rough as tree bark, would come home every night with stories about the skyscrapers of Manhattan he'd only ever seen from a distance. "One day, Emily, you're gonna walk right into those towers," he'd say, his eyes shining with a faith I didn't even have in myself back then. Life in Queens wasn't a picnic, though. High school was brutal. Kids mocked my beat-up sneakers, dubbed me the poor girl because I brought lunches wrapped in foil instead of fancy containers. One time, this blonde queen bee from the popular crowd, always decked out in a fresh jacket, accidentally spilled coffee all over a history presentation I'd slaved over for a week. "Oops, Harper, my hand slipped," she smirked, while her posse cackled around her. I stood there, papers dripping, face burning, but instead of crying, I clenched my jaw, picked up every soggy piece, and swore to myself, "You'll never let them win." That anger, that sting of being looked down on, lit a fire in me. I studied like a maniac, burning the midnight oil at our rickety kitchen table under the flicker of a neon sign outside the window. I clawed my way into NYU with a full scholarship business major, and the day that acceptance letter arrived, my mom hugged me so tight she cried, while my dad quietly wiped his eyes, the first time I'd ever seen him break. "You've made us so proud, kid," he said, and I knew I wasn't just doing it for me, I was doing it for them, for all the days they'd scraped by to give me a shot. Graduating NYU with honors, I could have taken the safe route, a cushy desk job somewhere, but that wasn't me. I wanted something mine, something no one could snatch away. So Harper Events was born in a cramped Brooklyn rental, just me, an old laptop, and a phone book full of strangers' names. Those early days, I hustled nonstop lugging flowers across town, stringing up lights myself for small birthday gigs or budget weddings. Some nights, I'd ride the subway home at midnight, dead on my feet, but my heart would pound with excitement when a client called to say I'd turned their day into magic. It didn't take long for Harper Events to catch fire. From those little gigs, I landed bigger fish, a tech launch in Soho, a Hamptons wedding with a budget that could buy a decent car. Clients started calling me the event wizard because I could transform an empty warehouse into a dazzling ballroom or save an outdoor bash from a sudden downpour. I loved it, not just the money, but the control, the feeling that I could spin miracles out of thin air with my own two hands. Still, even standing in Manhattan's chandelier-lit ballrooms, I felt like an outsider. The polite handshakes, the fake smiles from the rich crowd, they all screamed I didn't belong. They'd gush over my work, but their eyes held something else: curiosity, maybe pity, like I was some exotic bird that flew into their golden cage. "Miss Harper, you did all this yourself? Impressive for someone like you," one lady cooed once, her tone syrupy but loaded. I'd smile, nod, but inside I'd vow, "One day you'll see me differently." That day crept closer, not as a contract or a pat on the back, but as a pair of eyes locking onto mine from across a room. It was a frigid winter night at the Plaza Hotel, and I was about to stumble into a world I wasn't ready for. One icy December night in Manhattan, the Plaza Hotel buzzed with energy, even as snow dusted the streets outside, turning the city into a twinkling postcard. I, Emily Harper, stood in a corner of the ballroom, clutching my iPad with the final checklist for tonight's charity gala. This was Harper Events' biggest gig yet, a fundraiser for a children's hospital, packed with New York's heaviest hitters, CEOs, hotshot lawyers, even stars who'd strutted the Met Gala red carpet. Every detail had to be flawless: the white orchids flown in from Hawaii, the soft golden lighting that made the auction paintings pop. I'd barely slept all week, but watching that room fill with glittering gowns and laughter like music, I knew I'd nailed it. Not everything went smooth, though. That morning, I got a call from Sophia Kane, a rival event planner who tried to sabotage me a few months back at a product launch. She'd accidentally ordered the wrong wine, leaving me scrambling to fix it in front of the client. This time, her voice dripped honey over the phone, sharp as thorns. "Heard you snagged the Plaza gig, Harper? Wow, careful now, not everyone survives in the deep end." I grinned, keeping my cool. "Thanks for the heads up, Sophia. I'm more of a swimmer than a sinker." She snorted and hung up, but I knew she wasn't done. Sure enough, hours before the gala, I found a delivery mix-up, cheap daisies instead of my orchids. Lucky for me, I had a Jersey supplier on speed dial. One frantic call and some sweet talking later, the right flowers rolled in just as the first guests arrived. Sophia could play dirty, but I played smarter. As the gala kicked off, I faded into the shadows, watching it unfold like a director behind the scenes. That's how I liked it, invisible but in charge. Bidders raised their paddles, applause erupted, and the donation tally climbed on the big screen. I was double-checking the waitstaff when a warm voice cut through the hum. "Are you the one behind all this magic?" I turned, startled, and met a pair of piercing blue eyes staring right into me. He was tall, blonde hair slicked back, rocking a perfectly tailored tux with a smile that mixed confidence and charm. "James Whitmore," he said, extending a hand. "And I think my mom needs to meet you like yesterday." Whitmore, the name hit me like a gong. The Whitmores were New York royalty money pouring from real estate empires and investment funds stretching from Manhattan to Miami. They weren't just rich. They shaped the city, gracing the front page of the Wall Street Journal and the society columns of Vogue. I shook his hand, steadying my voice despite my racing pulse. "Emily Harper, Harper Events." "Nice to meet you." James grinned, his gaze lingering a beat too long. "You've got me curious, Emily. Not everyone can turn a ballroom into this." He waved at the room, chandeliers glinting off champagne flutes, a scene straight out of a movie. I gave a small laugh, used to compliments, but something about James stuck with me. He wasn't just polite, he was genuinely intrigued. Late in the evening, as the guests began to leave, James found me again. I was checking on the cleanup crew when he appeared, still wearing that same smile. "My mom, Evelyn, is looking for someone to plan her 60th birthday party in Miami next year. I told her you're the only one for the job." I was caught off guard but tried to stay professional. "Thanks, but I'd need to meet with Mrs. Whitmore to go over the details." James nodded, pulling a business card from his pocket. "Call me. Not for my mom, for me. I want to know more about the wizard behind these parties." He winked, then walked off, leaving me holding the card and feeling a strange mix of excitement and nerves. In the weeks that followed, James became more than just a name on a card. He showed up at my little Brooklyn office under the pretense of discussing Mom's party, but our talks quickly shifted to coffee dates, then surprise dinners at restaurants I'd only ever read about in magazines. He told me about growing up on the Upper East Side, summers on yachts in the Caribbean, but he also really listened when I talked about Queens, late nights studying under neon lights, and my dream of building something of my own. "You're different, Emily," he said one night as we sat on a bench in Central Park, watching golden leaves drift down. "You're not fake. I'm tired of people who just tell me what I want to hear." But not everyone welcomed me like James did. The first time I met Evelyn Whitmore, his mother, at her Park Avenue penthouse, I felt a chill despite the roaring fireplace. Evelyn, with her perfectly styled silver hair and Chanel dress, sized me up, her smile sharp as a blade. "Harper Events, right? Quite impressive for a self-made girl like you to pull off something like this." She lingered on self-made, as if to remind me of the gulf between us. I smiled back. Thank you, I love what I do." But her cold, probing stare made one thing clear. I could plan her parties, but I shouldn't dream of stepping into her world. James didn't seem to notice or didn't want to notice the tension. He kept showing up with surprise bouquets, late-night funny texts, and promises that he wanted me in his life. "You make me feel like anything's possible, Emily," he said one night as we stood on the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan skyline twinkling in the distance. For the first time, I let my heart open, even though a tiny voice whispered, "Be careful, Emily. Things that shine don't always last." I pushed it aside, letting myself fall in love, believing James would stand by me no matter how much his world tried to shut me out. I didn't know that even in the sweetest moments, a storm was brewing, waiting to sweep me away. Fall in New York, with golden leaves blanketing Fifth Avenue, should have been the sweetest time of my life. I, Emily Harper, was newly engaged to James Whitmore, the man I thought I'd build a world with. The diamond ring sparkling on my finger, a gift from James during a starry night in the Hamptons, was a promise of a future I'd once only dreamed of. But amid the smiles and congratulations, a chill started creeping in, not from the autumn breeze, but from the eyes of the people about to become my family. James and I had started like a fairy tale, but once that engagement ring was on my finger, I realized I'd stepped into a game where I didn't know all the rules. The Whitmore family, with a fortune stretching back to the Industrial Revolution, wasn't just a family, they were an empire, with unwritten codes and expectations heavy as stone walls. Evelyn Whitmore, James's mother, ruled that invisible throne. Every meeting with her felt like facing a judge, her gaze icy and her smile never reaching her eyes. "James says you're very talented, Emily. she once said over tea at her Park Avenue penthouse, her voice sweet but cutting. It's admirable for a girl from your background to come so far. The word background hung there, a reminder that to her, I'd always be the girl from Queens, nothing more. I tried to brush it off, telling myself James's love would be enough. He was still sweet, still held my hand under the table when his mom dropped veiled digs, still whispered that I was the most special person he'd ever met. But those moments started fading behind the times he stayed silent while Evelyn criticized me. Like the night we went to a dinner at the Whitmore estate, where Evelyn had deliberately invited Olivia Reynolds, an old Yale friend of James's. Olivia, with her glossy brown hair and velvet soft voice, was Upper East Side perfection. Born to a pedigreed family, schooled in Paris, and clearly the wife Evelyn had always wanted for James. Over dinner, Olivia reminisced about the old days with James summers in Cape Cod, yacht parties while I sat there, my wineglass growing cold in my hand. "Oh, Emily, you've never been to places like that, have you?" she said, her smile bright but her eyes sharp. I smiled back. "Not yet, but I like making my own memories." James laughed. But he didn't stop Olivia from going on, and Evelyn just sipped her wine, pleased to see me sidelined. That feeling like I was an uninvited guest in my own love story grew stronger. Evelyn started meddling in everything. She'd call constantly, asking me to throw little parties for her friends, never mentioning payment. "You're practically family now, Emily. This is just bonding, right?" she'd say, her tone light but loaded. I agreed, not to win her over, but to prove I belonged. I turned her tea parties into flawless events, with silk tablecloths and macarons shipped from a famous Soho bakery. But no matter how hard I tried, Evelyn always found fault. "The table's lovely, Emily, but a bit over the top, don't you think?" she'd say in front of a dozen of her friends, leaving me wanting to disappear. James, standing nearby, would just shrug later and say, "That's mom for you. Don't take it personally." But I did. Every word, every look from Evelyn and her crowd felt like tiny cuts not deep enough to bleed, but enough to sting. I started wondering if I was giving up too much for this love. James still said he loved me, still took me to fancy dinners, but I noticed he rarely brought me to private family gatherings. "Just boring stuff, you wouldn't enjoy it," he'd say, but I caught the dodge in his voice. One night, when I overheard a call between him and his sister Charlotte, I froze as she said, "Mom still thinks you should reconsider, James. Olivia's single, and she's a much better fit." James laughed it off, but he didn't argue, and my heart clenched. I tried to shove the doubts aside, throwing myself into work to stay sane. Harper Events was booming, landing big corporate gigs and wedding bookings in the Hamptons. But even in those wins, I felt an emptiness. One night, standing alone in my Brooklyn office, staring at Manhattan's distant lights, I asked myself, who am I trying to please? James, Evelyn, or me? I didn't have an answer, but I knew that no matter how beautiful this love was, it was pulling me into a world where I had to fight to hold on to myself. And that world, I was starting to see, didn't welcome me the way I'd hoped. My wedding to James Whitmore took place on a radiant spring day in the Hamptons, where golden sunlight spilled across manicured lawns and the ocean whispered its blessings. I, Emily Harper, stood in a flowing white silk gown, clutching a bouquet of peonies, feeling like I was living a dream. The Montauk Yacht Club, a venue I'd chosen and meticulously planned down to the last detail, shimmered like a jewel under its chandeliers. The tables were draped in Italian silk, champagne flutes from France sparkled with golden bubbles, and a live band played Etta James's At Last as I walked in. Over 500 guests, from real estate tycoons to Broadway stars, erupted in applause, but my eyes sought only James, standing there in a black tuxedo, his smile so bright it felt like the whole world belonged to us. I'd poured my heart into this wedding, not just because it was my big day, but because I wanted to prove I belonged in James's world. As an event planner, I knew how to make things perfect, and I did. New York Society pages later dubbed it the wedding of the year, with gushing articles praising everything from the floral arrangements to the 6-course menu inspired by the Amalfi Coast. But amid the accolades, I couldn't shake the feeling that this perfection didn't fully belong to me. Evelyn Whitmore, James's mother, had meddled in every decision. She insisted on adding 50 guests from her important list, swapped my beloved sea blue table linens for a more traditional cream, and even demanded I rewrite my speech because it was too emotional. "You need to remember, Emily, this isn't just your wedding, it's a Whitmore event," she said, her voice soft but cutting like a knife through silk. I gritted my teeth and agreed for James, for love, but each compromise chipped away a piece of me. The wedding day should have been the peak of my happiness, but the cracks started showing right then. As I posed for photos with the Whitmore family, Evelyn pulled me aside, smiling for the cameras but whispering, "You look decent, Emily, but don't forget to stay in shape. You're a Whitmore now." That little comment pierced my heart like a needle. James didn't hear, too busy shaking hands with some senator, and I stood there, smiling for the lens, but feeling like I'd just been reminded I could only exist in this world if I played by their rules. After the wedding, we moved into a penthouse on the Upper East Side, a gift from James's parents. The sprawling apartment, with its views of Central Park and million-dollar paintings on the walls, was stunning, but it never felt like home. I felt like a guest, always careful not to disturb its perfection. James, now officially working for the family's investment fund, grew busier. The evenings we used to spend strolling through Brooklyn or eating pizza in the park gave way to late-night calls and sudden business trips. "I'm just trying to keep everything steady, Em," he'd say, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine, and I started wondering what everything really meant. Evelyn, now officially my mother-in-law, made her control more obvious. She began demanding I plan every Whitmore family event from Charlotte's birthday to her annual charity gala without ever mentioning payment. "You're family now, Emily. This is how we bond," she'd say, as if I were an unpaid employee. I tried to push back gently, explaining that Harper Events was swamped with big contracts, but she'd just smile coolly. "You wouldn't want to disappoint James, would you?" So I bit my tongue and did it, turning her parties into flawless spectacles, though all I'd get was a curt nod or a critique like, "Very nice, but next time try lilies instead of roses, Doubt started creeping in. One evening at Charlotte's birthday party at the family's golf club, I overheard a guest whispering to a friend. Word is, James was once engaged to Olivia Reynolds, the Reynolds girl. Everyone thought they'd tie the knot until Emily came along. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I glanced at James, laughing with a group of friends, and wondered if he'd ever told me the full truth about Olivia. When I asked him later, he shrugged, chuckling lightly. "Just rumors, Em. Olivia's an old friend, nothing more." But his smile didn't feel real, and I sensed an invisible gap widening between us. Worse, I began to realize the Whitmore family didn't just look down on me, they didn't see me as one of them. At family dinners, my opinions were brushed aside like I was a kid interrupting the adults. "Emily, planned anything fun lately?" James's father, Richard, once asked. But before I could answer, Evelyn cut in. "Oh, Richard, let me tell you about Charlotte's plans in Paris." James said nothing, just kept eating, and I sat there, my wine glass cooling in my hand, wondering if I was trading myself away for a dream that would never be real. One night, with James away on another trip, I sat alone in the silent penthouse, staring out at Manhattan's lights. On the table was an invitation from Evelyn, demanding I plan yet another event, this time their anniversary party. No thank you, no respect. I closed my eyes, feeling like I was at a crossroads. One path led to the safety of the love I'd once believed in, the other to a place I couldn't yet see, but where I could at least be myself. I didn't know which way to go, but I knew that if this kept up, I'd lose the most precious thing I had, my self-respect. The Upper East Side penthouse, the place James Whitmore and I called home, had once been my dream, but after 2 years of marriage, it felt like a gilded cage. I, Emily Harper, stood by the window overlooking Central Park, watching couples hold hands under the hazy glow of streetlights, and wondered when I'd become a shadow in my own life. The walls adorned with million-dollar art, the Persian rugs beneath my feet, all of it belonged to James's world, not mine. I'd tried to fit in, to be the perfect wife the Whitmores expected, but every step I took toward them pushed me further from myself. The Whitmore family wasn't just cold, they had a way of making me feel invisible. Family dinners at Evelyn's Westchester estate were the clearest proof. I'd sit there in a carefully chosen dress to avoid being called too flashy, but no one bothered asking my thoughts. When I tried to share news about a new Harper Events project, a Tribeca film premiere, I'd turned into a media sensation. Evelyn interrupted, her voice syrupy sweet. "How charming, Emily. But Charlotte just got invited to judge a panel in London. She's really our pride and joy." Charlotte, James's sister, smirked smugly while James took a sip of wine, silent. I felt like an uninvited guest, tolerated, never welcomed. James, who once was my light, now felt like a stranger. He came home late, always tied up with family investment fund meetings, and when I tried asking about his day, he'd brush me off. "Just work, Em. Don't worry." But I did worry not about the work, but about the moments he avoided my gaze, the times his phone buzzed in the middle of the night, and he'd slip out to the balcony to answer. Once, when he left his phone on the table, a text popped up from LR. Just a simple, "Meet you tonight?" My heart tightened, but when I asked, he laughed it off. "It's just Lauren, an old Yale friend. She's asking about an investment thing. No big deal, Em." Lauren Reynolds, a name that had unsettled me back when we first started dating, now loomed like a ghost. I wanted to believe him, but a voice in my head whispered that the truth wasn't so simple. Meanwhile, Evelyn made it clearer every day that she saw me as her tool. She demanded I plan every family event from a promotion party for James's father, Richard, to a museum fundraiser she chaired without ever offering a dime. "You've got talent, Emily. Why quibble over money with family?" she'd say, as if I were a servant paid in the honor of serving the Whitmores. I tried to push back, citing Harper Events' packed schedule, but she'd just smile icily. "James wouldn't be happy if you said no, you know." So I kept going, turning her visions into reality, though each time I finished, I'd get a lukewarm remark like, "Not bad, but next time use sterling silver for the cutlery, Emily. Plastic looks cheap." That sense of being dismissed didn't just come from Evelyn. Charlotte, with her blonde hair and the arrogance she inherited from her mother, always found ways to remind me of the gap between us. At a party in Evelyn's penthouse, as I was sharing about an event I'd done for a big fashion brand, Charlotte cut in, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Sounds fun, Emily, but don't you ever think about doing something bigger? I mean, beyond decorating parties?" The table laughed like I was a kid showing off a sloppy drawing. James, sitting beside me, just rested a hand on my shoulder, but that touch didn't comfort me. It felt like a weak apology for his silence. Moments like that piled up, like stones in a bag growing heavier by the day. I started feeling like I was losing myself of the girl from Queens who'd risen above every taunt, who'd built Harper Events from nothing. One night, with James away on his third business trip that month, I sat in the dark living room, the only light coming from Manhattan's glow outside. On the table was a card from Evelyn, demanding another event, this time a birthday for James's grandmother, with a note. "No red, Emily. It's tacky." I gripped the card, wanting to tear it apart, but instead I just sighed. I'd tried to please them, but no one in this family truly wanted me there. Worse, I began to see that James wasn't the man I'd fallen for. He stopped sharing his dreams with me, stopped holding my hand on park walks. Once, when I borrowed his laptop to check a work email, I found an open chat window, a thread between him and Lauren. "I miss those Cape Cod days," she wrote, and James replied, "Me too. Maybe we should meet up soon." I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding, the floor beneath me feeling like it was crumbling. When he got home that night, I confronted him. "What's Lauren to you, James?" He looked startled, then laughed. "Jealous, Em? She's just a friend, honest." But his eyes flickered, and I knew he was hiding something. I didn't cry or make a scene. Instead, I turned back to Harper Events, the one place I still had control. My company was thriving, landing deals with major corporations and gigs in Los Angeles and Miami. But even in those victories, I felt alone. One evening, standing solo in my office, staring at photos from events I'd pulled off, I asked myself, who am I living for? James, his family, or me? The question hung there unanswered, but it sparked a tiny flame inside me, smoldering, waiting to ignite. And I knew, though I didn't know when, that day would come, the day I'd have to choose between fading into a shadow or standing up to reclaim myself. I, Emily Harper, once thought love could conquer any barrier, but after 2 years as James Whitmore's wife, I faced a bitter truth. Love isn't enough when you're fighting alone. The Upper East Side penthouse, with its pricey art and the glow of Manhattan through the windows, had become a prison for my heart. Each day, I felt myself shrinking, a star eclipsed by the Whitmore family's shadow. But in that darkness, I found a spark not of hope, but of truth, sharp and undeniable. It all came crashing down one Saturday morning when James rushed out with an excuse about an emergency meeting at the family fund. He kissed my cheek, mumbling something about being late, but the laptop he left on the breakfast table told a different story. I wasn't snooping, I'd never been the type to check his phone or emails, but the screen lit up with an open email and the name Lauren Reynolds hit me like a punch. Subject: "We need to talk about this." My heart raced, but I couldn't stop myself. I opened it, and each line tore through the shield I'd built to protect myself. "James, I know you're in a tough spot, but I can't wait forever. The doctor says the baby's healthy 16 weeks now. You need to tell her before it all comes out." Baby. 16 weeks. I read it over and over, the air draining from the room. Lauren, the old friend James always downplayed, wasn't just a ghost from his past, she was his present, carrying his child. I scrolled down, finding months of emails between them. Promises to meet in Miami, reminiscences about Cape Cod days, and worst of all, a line from James. I'll handle things with Emily, just need more time. Handle things. Like I was a problem to be erased. I shut the laptop, my hands trembling, but no tears came. Instead, a strange clarity rose in me like I'd been jolted awake from a long sleep. I grabbed my phone, snapped photos of the emails, sent them to my personal account, then wiped my tracks from his laptop. I didn't want him to know I'd seen it not yet, but I knew those emails weren't enough to protect myself. So I dug deeper, not just into James's emotional secrets, but into the Whitmore empire I'd once thought untouchable. A week later, opportunity knocked when James left his briefcase in the home office. He'd gone to meet his father, Richard, to discuss some investments, and I seized the moment. Inside were copies of contracts, financial reports, and a file stamped confidential in bold letters. I opened it, and what I saw turned my blood cold. The Whitmore Investment Fund, the family's backbone, was teetering on collapse. Millions in loans from a Swiss bank, properties in Palm Beach and Aspen mortgaged to the hilt, and a string of internal emails between James and Richard about funneling money to offshore accounts before the investors catch on. Tucked between the pages was a handwritten note in Evelyn's script. This stays quiet. If rumors leak, the family's done. I wasn't just shocked by the scale of the crisis, I was floored that James had never breathed a word to me. I was his wife, yet he'd kept me in the dark about the family's biggest decisions, as if I couldn't be trusted, or worse, wasn't worth including in their world. I photographed every page, carefully returned them, and sank onto the couch, my mind reeling. James hadn't just betrayed me with Lauren, he and his family were setting me up to be cut out, left clueless so I couldn't claim anything when it all fell apart. But a chance to unravel their scheme came from an unexpected source. One afternoon, while meeting a florist in Soho for an event, I got a call from an unknown number. The man on the line introduced himself as Paul Grayson, a former Whitmore family banker fired 6 months ago. "I hear you're James Whitmore's wife," he said, his voice low and cautious. "I've got something you need to know, but not over the phone. Meet me at the coffee shop on 23rd Street, 3 p.m. tomorrow." I hesitated, but curiosity and the simmering anger inside me made me agree. Paul Grayson, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes, was waiting in the corner of the shop, nursing a cold coffee. He didn't waste time. "The Whitmores aren't just in financial trouble, Ms. Harper. They're hiding assets to dodge lawsuits when the fund crashes. And James? He's behind it all." He slid an envelope across the table, stuffed with copies of bank transactions showing millions moved overseas under shell companies. "They don't want you to know," Grayson said. "James told me to cut you out of all joint account info right after you got married." I gripped the envelope, my chest tightening. "Why tell me?" I asked. He shrugged, a bitter smile flickering. "Because I know what it's like to be treated like trash by them, and I figured you deserve the truth." I left the coffee shop with the envelope in my bag, my head spinning, but my resolve sharper than ever. James and his family hadn't just betrayed me, they'd planned to make me the scapegoat when their empire crumbled. But they'd underestimated me. I wasn't the queen's girl who'd just bow her head and take it. I had Harper events, my wits, and now, proof. I didn't know exactly what I'd do with these documents, but one thing was clear, I wouldn't let them keep running my life. One night, when James came home late, a stranger's perfume lingering on his shirt, I watched him across the dinner table, my heart heavy but my voice steady. "Everything okay, James? You look tired." He flashed that smile I once loved, now hollow. "Just work, Em. I'm fine." I nodded, sipping my wine, but in my mind I was counting the steps to the day I'd rise not with tears, but with a strength they'd never see coming. That day, I knew, was closer than ever. April in New York brought soft rain, blurring Manhattan's glittering lights. But inside me, Emily Harper, a real storm was brewing. I knew the truth about James Whitmore, about his unborn child with Lauren Reynolds, the offshore accounts hiding millions, and how his family planned to discard me like an unwanted trinket. I was no longer the naive girl who thought love could fix everything. Now, I was a woman armed with evidence, a thriving event company, and a steel determination not to let them crush me. When Evelyn Whitmore tasked me with planning her 60th birthday bash in Miami, I agreed not to please her, but because I saw an opportunity, the perfect stage to flip the board. Evelyn billed the Miami trip as the event of the year, a week of extravagance with yacht parties, Michelin star dinners, and a grand gala at the Fontainebleau, drawing elites from New York to Palm Beach. I threw myself into it, not out of loyalty, but for Harper Events' reputation. I called in top vendors, ordered orchids from Colombia, hired a James Beard award-winning chef, and designed a dazzling tablescape with golden lights reflecting off the ocean. Every detail was under my thumb, from the six-course menu to the live jazz playlist Evelyn loved. But while I worked, I kept digging, a detective in my own story. James, as usual, was distracted and distant. He jetted between New York and Miami under the guise of prepping for investors. But I knew he was seeing Lauren. Once, when he left his phone on the table in our temporary South Beach hotel, I glimpsed a text from her. "Booked Nobu tonight. Just us." I didn't unlock it. I didn't need more proof. I already had plenty. The emails between James and Lauren, the bank records from Paul Grayson, and a handwritten note I'd found in James's briefcase, penned by Evelyn. After the birthday, tell Emily about the divorce. Make it look like her idea. Lauren gets reintroduced by Christmas. The words stabbed, but they didn't break me, they woke me up. They didn't just want me gone, they wanted me to walk away, humiliated, on their terms. I stayed quiet, wearing the mask of a polished event planner. I met with vendors in Miami, inspected the Fontainebleau ballroom, and even smiled when Evelyn called to nitpick that the tables look a bit too modern. "I'll tweak it, Mrs. Whitmore," I said sweetly. But in my head, I was sketching a different plan, one not on any checklist. I started contacting vendors privately, ensuring every contract was in Harper Events' name, every deposit came from my company account, and I had full cancellation rights if needed. Just a precaution, I told them, and they nodded, used to my meticulous style. But the moment that cemented my plan came from an unexpected email sent to my work inbox late one night at the hotel. The sender was anonymous, but the contents were crystal clear. An attached document detailing Evelyn's plans for the birthday party. Buried in it, underlined, was a small note. "Ensure Emily's seat is removed from the main table. When she leaves, James will announce the divorce, framing it as mutual." I sat there, bathed in the laptop's blue glow, feeling my blood turn to ice. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a meticulously staged humiliation, designed to cast me as a willing failure exiting the Whitmore empire in front of hundreds of guests. I shut the laptop, stood, and stepped onto the balcony, gazing at Miami's ocean shimmering under the moonlight. The salty breeze blew through, bringing a clarity I'd never felt before. They thought I'd cry, beg, or crumble under their scheme. But they didn't know I wasn't the Queen's girl who once trembled at taunts. I was Emily Harper, who'd built Harper Events from scratch, turning dreams into reality for people who didn't deserve it. I'd give them their party, but not the way they expected. The next few days, I worked with razor-sharp focus. I confirmed with the venue that the main table would have exactly 12 seats, as Evelyn demanded, but kept a copy of the original guest list with my name on it. I emailed vendors, instructing them to prep for last-minute changes at the gala, and ensured every financial transaction was documented under my name. James, distracted by secret calls and evasive glances, noticed nothing. Evelyn, with her smug smile whenever we crossed paths, thought I was still her obedient pawn. One afternoon, while checking the lighting in the ballroom, a young hotel staffer named Maria pulled me aside. "Ms. Harper, I don't want to stir trouble, but I heard Mrs. Whitmore tell the manager you won't be staying at the party long," she said. "You'd leave for personal reasons." Maria looked at me, eyes wide with worry, and I smiled, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Thanks, Maria. Don't worry, it'll be fine." But as she walked away, I clenched my fists, a fire blazing in my chest. They didn't just want me gone, they wanted the world to watch me fail. The night before leaving New York for Miami, I sat alone in the Harper Events office, staring at photos from past events. Smiles, lights, moments I'd made real. I opened my laptop, reviewing the emails, documents, and evidence I'd gathered. I didn't know exactly what I'd do in Miami, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't let them write my story's end. I shut the laptop, turned off the lights, and stepped outside, Brooklyn's glow flickering behind me. Miami awaited, and I had arrived not as a victim, but as someone ready to rewrite the rules. Miami in May sparkled like a gem under the sun, its waves glinting and the air buzzing with a city that never slept. But that night, at Ocean Prime in the Fontainebleau, I, Emily Harper, felt none of the warmth from the lights or the ocean's salty tang. I stood before a breathtaking table I'd designed, white orchids cascading like clouds, golden candlelight dancing on crystal, and a view of the sea that stole your breath. This was Evelyn Whitmore's 60th birthday, an event I'd sweated and bled to perfect. But as I approached my spot at the main table, my heart skipped. No chair, no name card, no trace of me. Just 12 seats, and I wasn't one of them. The Whitmores were all there, Evelyn, radiant in a metallic Chanel gown, pearls gleaming, Richard, James's father, with his polite but eyed smile, Charlotte, James's sister, whispering to her husband, and James, my husband, seated beside his mother, his eyes dodging mine. The other guests, billionaires, politicians, stars from New York to LA, chatted and laughed, oblivious to the omission. But I knew, and that knowledge cut like a blade, slicing through the last thread of faith I'd held for them. Evelyn caught my eye, her smile saccharine but venomous. "Something wrong, Emily?" she asked, loud enough for the table to hear. "You look a bit lost." A ripple of soft laughter spread, a small wave threatening to drown me. I glanced around Charlotte's curious stare, Richard's fleeting discomfort, and James, half standing as if to play concerned, though his eyes held no warmth. "Must be a mix-up," he said lightly. "We probably miscounted chairs." Another laugh, louder this time, like I was the night's punchline. I stood there, in the deep green silk dress I'd picked to match my eyes, feeling the world watch me unravel. But then a memory flashed me in high school. Kids mocking my torn shoes and me gritting my teeth, refusing to let them win. I wasn't that girl anymore, but the fire still burned. I straightened, took a deep breath, and spoke, my voice clear enough to surprise even myself. "Guess I'm not family." 4 words, simple but sharp, slashing through the stifling air. Evelyn's smile froze, James's gaze wavered, and the table fell silent, only the distant crash of waves breaking through. I turned, walking through the ballroom with deliberate steps, head high. Eyes followed waitstaff, guests, even the pianist in the corner, but I didn't care. James called after me, "Emily, don't overreact. We'll find you a seat." But I didn't stop. I moved through the marble hallway, down the elevator, and out onto the street, where Miami's warm air wrapped around me like an embrace. I didn't cry, didn't tremble. Instead, a sharp clarity settled in, every puzzle piece finally clicking into place. I crossed the street to a small cafe facing Ocean Prime, its dim lights and espresso scent grounding me. I ordered a coffee, sat at a corner table with a clear view of the restaurant, and pulled out my phone. It was time to flip the board. I'd prepared for this, though I never imagined it'd happen like this. I opened my email, sending a pre-drafted message to Marco, the restaurant manager I'd worked with on 3 prior events. "Marco, trigger the backup plan we discussed. Cancel all Harper Events payments. Bill Mrs. Whitmore directly. Authorization attached." I included documents proving I'd made the deposits and had cancellation rights, then hit send. Next, I called the other vendors, the yacht company for tomorrow's outing, the Eden Rock for the week's stay, the limo service for VIP guests. "Cancel everything under Harper Events," I said, voice calm but firm. "Resubmit invoices to the Whitmore family. They'll handle it." Each call was a cut, severing the ties binding me to them. I rerouted every deposit back to my company account, ensuring not a penny of mine stayed tangled in the chaos to come. In 15 minutes, I'd turned Evelyn's lavish week into a house of cards, waiting for the tide to sweep it away. My phone buzzed incessantly texts from James, at first gentle. "Where'd you go, Em? Come back, don't upset Mom." Then frantic. "Emily, what's happening? The restaurant just asked Mom about the bill." I didn't reply. I sipped my espresso, gazing through the cafe window at Ocean Prime's glowing lights. Right now, they were probably digging into the appetizers, lobster, and caviar Evelyn had insisted on, blissfully unaware that my money wouldn't be footing the tab. But the real jolt came from an unexpected encounter right there in the cafe. A woman walked in, her sequined gown shimmering, platinum hair swept up high. I recognized her instantly, Diane Prescott, Evelyn's close friend, who'd once looked at me with pity at Whitmore family gatherings. She sat at my table uninvited and spoke, her voice low and sharp. "What are you doing, Emily? I saw you leave the party. Evelyn said you weren't feeling well, but I don't buy it." I met her gaze, unflinching. "You want the truth? They deliberately left me out, no seat, no place. They want me gone." Diane raised an eyebrow, not surprised. "Evelyn's always loved control," she said, almost a whisper. "But you're not the type they can puppet, are you?" I smiled, my first real one that night. "No, I'm not." Diane left, but her words sparked something, fueling my resolve. I checked my watch 20 minutes since I'd walked out. I texted Marco, Go time. Then I stood, paid for my coffee, and stepped outside, ready to watch their world crumble. I didn't know if I'd win, but I knew one thing: I wouldn't let them write my ending. Not tonight, not ever. The air in the small cafe across from Ocean Prime hummed with espresso and soft jazz, but my mind, Emily Harper's mind, burned like an unquenchable flame. I sat there, eyes locked on the restaurant through the glass, where the Whitmores were still toasting Evelyn's 60th, clueless that I'd just yanked the rug out from under them. In 20 minutes, I'd canceled every Harper Events transaction for their lavish week, from tonight's dinner to tomorrow's yacht trip to the Key Biscayne villa they'd planned for the weekend. Deposits were back in my company account, and the bills were now headed straight to the Whitmores, a family I knew was teetering on bankruptcy. But I wasn't done. I wanted them to feel the exact humiliation they'd planned for me. My phone kept buzzing texts from James, Charlotte, even Richard, James's father. James started pleading. "Emily, where are you? Come back, Mom's freaking out." Then furious. "What did you do to the restaurant? They say the deposit's canceled. Call me now." Charlotte was blunter. "Think you're clever? You'll regret this." I didn't respond, just took a final sip of espresso, letting its bitterness linger. Through the window, Ocean Prime's light still blazed, but I knew chaos was brewing inside. I opened my laptop, checking an email from Marco, the restaurant manager. "Done as requested, Ms. Harper. Bill sent to Mrs. Whitmore. They're asking for me." I smirked, picturing Evelyn Pearl's gleaming, smug smile, realizing her $1 million bash no longer had my backing. But I didn't stop there. I fired off more emails to the other vendors: lighting crew, jazz band, even the hotshot LA. Photographer Evelyn had demanded, "Cancel all Harper event services. Bill the Whitmores directly. Demand immediate payment." I knew they couldn't pay. Paul Grayson's documents had shown their fund was a hollow shell, and I wanted Miami to know it too. Then came the bolder move. I opened an anonymous email account I'd set up days ago and sent a brief note to a Miami Herald Society reporter known for dishing on the elite. Hot tip: the Whitmores are in deep financial trouble. Check tonight's Ocean Prime bill, they can't cover it. I attached a redacted copy of the canceled restaurant contract, scrubbing my name for protection, and hit send. My heart pounded, knowing this could ruin not just their party, but their reputation. Just then, a figure loomed over my table. I looked up, startled, to see Lauren Reynolds standing there in a tight red silk dress, her eyes cold but edged with unease. "Emily," she said, voice hushed, almost a hiss. "We need to talk." I raised an eyebrow, staying seated, forcing calm despite the rage boiling inside. "About what, Lauren? You being pregnant with my husband's kid? Or how you and James plan to kick me out of his life?" Her face paled, but she regained her composure fast. "You've got it wrong. I didn't want to hurt you. James, he loves me, and I thought you should hear the truth before it gets worse." I let out a dry laugh, standing to face her. "The truth? I've known it for a while, Lauren. I know about the baby, the texts, how the Whitmores plan to make me a laughingstock tonight. But you're wrong about one thing: it won't get worse for me. It'll get worse for them." She stared, her confidence wavering, like she was seeing for the first time I wasn't easy prey. "What are you doing, Emily?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I tilted my head, smiling. "Just cleaning up the mess you and James left behind." I turned away, not giving her a chance to respond, and stepped out of the cafe, feeling like I'd reclaimed a huge piece of myself. Outside, Miami's air was still warm, but a cool breeze swept through my soul. I pulled out my phone, texting Marco, "Make sure they get the bill now." Then I stood under a streetlight, gazing at Ocean Prime. I pictured Evelyn opening the invoice, her haughty smile fading at the sight of a tens of thousands dollar tab she couldn't pay. I saw James, pale, fumbling to explain to his father while Charlotte whispered frantically to her husband. And I knew, right then, they were realizing they'd underestimated me, a mistake they'd pay for dearly. But I didn't want to stop there. I opened my laptop again, firing off one last message to every vendor I'd contacted that week. "Thanks for your cooperation. Send Harper Events regards to the Whitmores when they try to pay." I snapped the laptop shut, stood tall, and took a deep breath. I didn't need to go back inside to witness the fallout. I could feel it, a symphony of justice resonating in my chest. I turned and walked along the ocean front, letting Miami's lights fade behind me. They wanted me gone, but I'd leave on my terms, not as a victim, but as the one who rewrote her own ending. The Miami night still dazzled, Ocean Prime's lights twinkling like lost stars on the water, but in my heart, Emily Harper's heart, there was no sparkle left for the Whitmores. I stood a block away, feeling the chaos ripple through the restaurant without setting foot back inside. Minutes ago, I'd ordered Marco, the manager, to hand Evelyn Whitmore the bill, along with news that Harper Events deposits were canceled. I knew they couldn't pay. Paul Grayson's documents had exposed their empire as a hollow shell, propped up by lies and unpayable loans. But I didn't just want them to fail, I wanted them to taste the humiliation they'd planned for me. Tonight, I'd make sure of it. My phone buzzed nonstop, a flood of texts from James. Emily, what are you doing? The restaurant says the contract's void. Call me now. Then Charlotte, you're insane. You've ruined everything. Even Richard, who rarely texted me, sent a cold line. You'll pay for this. I didn't reply, just smiled, letting their threats drift away like sea breeze. They thought they could scare me back, but they didn't realize I'd crossed the point of no return long ago. I took a deep breath, smoothed my deep green silk dress, and decided it was time to face them. I crossed the street, heels clicking steadily on the pavement, each step a drumbeat marking my return not as a victim, but as the one holding all the cards. Pushing through Ocean Prime's doors, I felt the shift in the air. The earlier chatter had given way to anxious whispers. Guests, billionaires, politicians, stars glanced around, sensing a storm brewing. At the main table, the Whitmores were in disarray. Marco stood there, iPad in hand, face polite but firm, explaining something to Richard. Evelyn clutched her pearls, her smug smile replaced by veiled panic. James was on his feet, phone to his ear, clearly trying to reach me. As I entered the ballroom, the world seemed to freeze. Every eye turned to me, waiters, guests, even the pianist paused mid-note. I walked straight to the main table, unhurried, unshaken, feeling like I'd stepped onto the stage of my own life. Evelyn spoke first, her voice trembling but clinging to authority. Emily, what's this stunt? Get back here and fix it. I stopped, locking eyes with her, and smiled not the apology she expected, but the smile of someone who knew she held the power. Evelyn, I said, my voice clear and carrying across the room. You want to know what I'm doing? I'm just following your lessons, planning perfectly, but this time the ending's mine, not yours. The table went silent, only the distant waves breaking through. James stepped forward, pale, reaching for my arm, but I pulled back. Emily, enough, he said, almost pleading. We can sort this out. Don't embarrass Mom. Embarrass? I echoed, my tone cutting like a blade. James, you and your family were set to publicly dump me right here in front of all these people. No seat, no place that was your plan, right? I turned to Evelyn, who gripped her napkin like a lifeline. You thought I'd slink away, letting you and Lauren play out your perfect little drama. But you were wrong. I pulled out my phone, opened the anonymous email I'd sent to the Miami Herald reporter, and read aloud a snippet. The Whitmores face financial ruin. Tonight's Ocean Prime bill won't be paid, their funds a sham. I didn't say I'd sent it, but Richard's panicked glance and Charlotte's sharp gasp told me they knew what was coming. You wouldn't dare, Evelyn said, her voice quaking, but I cut her off. I didn't just dare, Evelyn, I did it. Every contract, every deposit was under Harper Events. I canceled it all: tonight's dinner, the yacht, the hotel, everything. And the bill? I nodded at Marco, still standing there, his neutral gaze tinged with respect. Pay it now, or all of Miami will know the Whitmores are broke. The room held its breath. Guests started murmuring, phones came out, and I knew the news would spread like wildfire. James stared at me, anger and desperation warring in his eyes. Emily, you don't get the consequences, he said, but I interrupted. I get it, James. I get that you betrayed me with Lauren, that her baby's yours. I get that your family hid millions offshore to dodge bankruptcy and that you plan to leave me with nothing. I pulled a printed email from my purse, the exchange between him and Lauren about the child, and slapped it on the table in front of Evelyn. Here's your truth. I'm just shining a light on it. Evelyn shot up, face ashen. You ungrateful wretch, after all we've done for you. But her voice faltered as Marco stepped forward, polite but insistent. Mrs. Whitmore, we need payment now, or I'll have to announce the party's over. Richard fumbled for his wallet, but I knew they had no cash or credit left. Their accounts had been frozen for months, as Paul Grayson had revealed. I turned to leave, but Charlotte lunged forward, voice shrill. Think you've won? You'll get nothing, Emily. James will ditch you and you'll crawl back to that queen's hole. I paused, looked at her and said, calm but piercing, Charlotte, I don't need your win. I've got mine freedom. Good luck when the world knows the truth. I walked out, the buzz of guests and Charlotte's shouts echoing behind me. As the elevator doors closed, I leaned against the wall, taking a deep breath, feeling 1,000-pound weight lift. Out there, the Whitmores were collapsing, but me, I was starting over, stronger than ever. I didn't know what tomorrow held, but one thing was certain: I'd reclaimed myself, and no one could take that away again. As the plane touched down at JFK, New York's lights greeted me, Emily Harper, like a reminder that I'd come home not as James Whitmore's wife, but as myself, a woman who'd risen from the ashes of a shattered dream. Miami, with its chaos at Ocean Prime and the night I turned the Whitmore's game upside down, was now a vivid memory, like a scar freshly healed, but still whispering of the strength I'd found. I pulled my suitcase through the airport, head high, no longer weighed down by years of trying to please a family that never wanted me. I was free, and for the first time in ages, I felt I truly belonged not in some glitzy Upper East Side penthouse, but in the life I'd built for myself. I didn't go back to James's penthouse. Instead, I rented a cozy apartment in Dumbo, Brooklyn, with windows framing the East River and the Manhattan Bridge twinkling each night. It wasn't big. No million-dollar art or Persian rugs, but it was mine, from the teal sofa I picked because I loved the color to the bookshelf stuffed with novels I'd missed while playing someone else's wife. I hung a large photo in the living room, me at a Harper Events gig 3 years ago, standing in a dazzling ballroom, my smile confident, eyes alight. That picture reminded me I'd been that woman once, and now, day by day, I was finding her again. Harper Events, the company I'd built from a beat-up laptop and big dreams, became the heart of my life. After Miami, word spread fast in the event world not about my failure, as the Whitmores had hoped, but about how I'd toppled an empire with a few calls and an unbreakable spirit. Old clients came back, new ones flocked in, and I landed gigs I'd never dreamed of. A film premiere in Los Angeles, a yacht wedding in the Bahamas, even a Met Museum gala I'd once done for the Whitmores. "You're the woman no one dares cross," a client chuckled while signing a contract, and I smiled, not denying it. I didn't need their spotlight, I was writing my own story. Meanwhile, the Whitmores unraveled under the glare they'd once craved. The Miami Herald, as I'd predicted, ran a sharp piece. Whitmores face financial woes at lavish birthday bash. It didn't name me, but it was enough to spook investors. Their fund came under scrutiny, offshore accounts were exposed, and the people who'd once clapped for Evelyn now whispered about her downfall. She sold the Palm Beach estate to cover debts, Charlotte was ousted from a charity board over reputation issues, and Richard, for the first time, faced a financial hearing looking gaunt. News hit New York like wildfire, and I heard Evelyn canceled her annual tea party for health reasons, though everyone knew it was because no one would show. James was the only one who tried to reach me. A week after Miami, he showed up unannounced at my Brooklyn apartment, disheveled in a wrinkled suit, eyes bloodshot. "Emily, we need to talk," he said, voice hoarse, like he hadn't slept since that night. I stood in the doorway, not inviting him in, arms crossed. "Talk about what, James? Lauren? Your kid? Or how you let your mom plan to kick me out of your life?" He bowed his head, shaking it like he was searching for words, but I didn't give him the chance. "You had everything, my love, my trust, and you threw it away. What do you want now? Forgiveness? Or just my silence to save your reputation?" "It's not like that," he said, almost begging. "I messed up, Emily. I didn't know it'd go this far. Mom, she pushed me, and Lauren, she was a mistake." I scoffed, seeing a stranger. "A mistake? James, you planned to divorce me at that party. You left me standing there, no seat, no place, like I was nothing. Don't talk about mistakes when you chose their side." He stepped forward, but I raised a hand to stop him. "Go back to Lauren, to your family, and leave me alone. I don't need you anymore." I shut the door, his footsteps fading, and for the first time I felt no pain, just relief, like I'd shed a too-tight coat I'd worn for years. I returned to my apartment, opened a bottle of wine, and sat by the window, watching the Manhattan Bridge glow. I didn't need James, Evelyn's approval, or anyone to validate my worth. I had Harper Events, new dreams, and most importantly, myself. A month later, I got an email from an old client, once Evelyn's friend. "You've got my admiration, Emily," she wrote. "Not everyone has your courage." I read it, smiled, and deleted it. I didn't need praise to know my strength. I'd proven it, not just to them, but to myself. I stood, prepping for a meeting with a new Manhattan client, and as I left the apartment, I felt a new vitality, like New York was opening its arms to welcome me back. I wasn't the Queen's girl or the frail Mrs. Whitmore anymore. I was Emily Harper, ready to write the next chapters of my life, brighter than ever. A year after that fateful Miami night, I, Emily Harper, stood on a Malibu cliff, gazing at the Pacific shimmering under a fiery sunset. Sea breeze carried salt and freedom, brushing my face like a reminder of how far I'd come. In a simple white silk dress, champagne in hand, I was surrounded by laughter and jazz from a wedding I'd just pulled off, a major event for a Hollywood power couple, with A-listers and Oscar-winning directors in the crowd. Harper Events, born from a dream and an old laptop, was now a name chased not just in New York but across the US. But tonight, on this cliff, I wasn't thinking about success or fame. I was thinking about my journey, the scars that had healed, and how I'd found true happiness not from others, but from within. New York, after Miami, became my playground. My Dumbo apartment brimmed with new memories, late nights planning events, mornings jogging along the East River with Nina Simone in my earbuds, evenings by the window journaling lessons from pain. Harper Events soared beyond my wildest dreams. I landed contracts with brands like Chanel and Tesla, staged product launches that set the world abuzz, and even spoke at a Las Vegas event conference, sharing my story not of the Whitmores, but of how a Queens girl made her dreams real. "Don't let anyone write your ending," I told a packed room. And as they stood to applaud, I felt the final piece of my heart mend. The Whitmore family, meanwhile, had become a cautionary tale among the elite. After the Miami Herald piece, their investment fund collapsed entirely. Investigators uncovered a web of shady dealings, and Richard faced a massive lawsuit from investors. Evelyn sold off nearly everything from the Palm Beach estate to her prized jewelry collection to settle debts. But her reputation was beyond repair. She stepped back from charity boards, and her once proud tea parties faded into memory. Charlotte tried launching a PR firm, but no one wanted to touch the Whitmore name. James and Lauren tied the knot in a quiet ceremony, but word got around they were living in a rented Brooklyn apartment, a twist of irony I couldn't help but smirk at. James stopped reaching out, but a few months ago I got a letter from Evelyn, something I never saw coming. "Emily," she wrote, her shaky script stripped of its old arrogance. "I hear you're doing well. I'd like you to plan a small fundraiser for a new charity I've joined. You were always good at this." No apology, no hint of owning up to what she'd done. I sat at my kitchen table, reading it, and laughed not out of anger, but at how far I'd outgrown them. I typed a brief reply. "Thanks for the offer, Mrs. Whitmore, but my schedule's full. Good luck." I hit send, feeling like I'd shut the last door on that past. I don't hate them, not anymore. In the early days after Miami, I'd wake up with a quiet rage simmering, but now I only feel gratitude. They tried to shrink me, to make me a footnote in their glittering saga, but their cruelty pushed me to where I belong. I learned happiness isn't about being accepted, it's about accepting yourself, scars, mistakes, victories, and all. Tonight, in Malibu, as the wedding wrapped up, I stood alone on the cliff, watching waves crash below. The guests had left, the band was packing up, but I wasn't ready to go. I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo of the sunset, and sent it to my mom in Queens, who still calls weekly to ask, "You okay, Emily?" "I'm good, Mom," I texted with the picture, "and I'm happy." She replied instantly, "I always knew you'd shine." I raised my now warm champagne glass and whispered to myself, "Thanks for that empty chair." That non-existent seat at Ocean Prime had shown me I didn't belong anywhere but in my own life. I took a sip, letting the bittersweet taste linger, and gazed at the ocean. Somewhere, the Whitmores might be piecing together their wreckage, but I didn't care. I'd found my light, brighter than any diamond they'd ever owned. And as I turned, walking down the path back to the city, I knew my story, the real one, was just beginning, and it would blaze brighter than any dream I'd ever dared to dream.